Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. I'm really glad you're with us again as we kind of grapple with this age-old question. Is there a link between creativity and mental illness?
Yeah.
And today we're diving into the life of a guy you might have heard of, Yukio Mishima,
Oh, yeah.
a Japanese author known for, well, a couple of things. Literary brilliance, but also this dramatic, meticulously planned suicide.
Yeah, I think to really set the stage for this deep dive, I want to share a quote from Mishima. It's from his essay, Sun and Steel.
Okay.
And I think it really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today.
Okay.
He wrote, "Pain is the sole proof of the persistence of consciousness within the flesh."
Wow.
And this obsession with physicality, with pushing the boundaries of pain and existence, it just seems so deeply intertwined with his creative process.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're dealing with a pretty intense perspective here. It's almost like he's saying suffering is essential for true awareness, for real art.
Yeah.
Does that set the tone for Mishima's life and work in general?
Absolutely. I mean, Mishima's life, it was full of these contradictions. A brilliant writer drawn to violence, an aesthete obsessed with death, a man wrestling with his own identity in a world that was rapidly changing around him.
So let's try to untangle some of these contradictions. I mean, where do we even begin with a figure as complex as Mishima?
Well, his childhood's a good place to start. I mean, it was anything but ordinary.
Okay.
He was raised in relative isolation by his grandmother Natsuko, kept away from other children, confined to his sick room due to a childhood illness. You can imagine the impact that might have had on a developing mind.
It sounds almost Dickensian, this lonely child trapped in a world of adults and shadows. But wasn't his family dynamic even more complicated than that?
Much more. His father, Azusa, he was a strict government official. He really disapproved of his artistic leanings, pushed him towards more traditional pursuits.
Oh, thanks.
But then, on the other hand, you have his relationship with his mother, Shizu. And that was incredibly intense, even described by some as bordering on, well, what we might call an enmeshed relationship.
Okay, hold on. We need to be careful with terms like enmeshed. What exactly does that mean in a psychological sense?
Yeah, so it essentially refers to a relationship where boundaries are blurred, and individual identities, they become intertwined in a way that can be unhealthy.
Okay.
Imagine a parent living vicariously through their child, or a child feeling an overwhelming sense of responsibility for their parent's emotional well-being.
I see, yeah.
This can create a lot of emotional dependence and make it difficult for the child to develop a strong sense of self.
So we've got this isolated child, pressure from his father to conform, and this potentially enmeshed relationship with his mother. It's not hard to see how this could create a fertile ground for some pretty intense psychological development.
Exactly. And these early experiences likely played a significant role in shaping Mishima's worldview. His fascination with themes of beauty, death, and the search for identity. Themes that would permeate his writing.
It's like his art became a way of processing these early traumas, these complicated relationships.
Right. That's one way to look at it, yeah. I mean, his work often explores the darker aspects of human nature, the tension between desire and societal expectations, the allure of transgression.
And this fascination with the darker side of things seems to have manifested in his personal life as well.
Right.
He was obsessed with physicality, with pushing his body to the limits. Through bodybuilding, swordsmanship, he even joined a private militia dedicated to reviving samurai traditions.
It's almost as if he was trying to forge a new identity for himself. A warrior identity, in contrast to the intellectual, artistic persona he was known for.
So how does this obsession with the physical, this almost militant mindset, how does that connect to his writing?
It's everywhere. I mean, his novels, they're filled with these vivid descriptions of the body, of violence, of ritualistic acts. He seemed to find a strange beauty in pain and suffering, a kind of transcendence that he couldn't find through purely intellectual pursuits.
And this fascination with pain, with pushing boundaries, that wasn't just theoretical. He was deeply invested in Japanese nationalism and idealized the country's samurai past.
Right, and this wasn't just, a nostalgic yearning for a bygone era. He saw Japan's post-war westernization as this kind of cultural decay.
Oh, wow.
A betrayal of its true spirit.
He even formed his own militia,
He did.
the Tatenokai, and attempted to incite a coup to restore the emperor to power. It's like his life was imitating his art. Or maybe his art was foreshadowing his life. I don't know.
It's a fascinating interplay between fiction and reality.
Right.
And his eventual suicide, the ritual seppuku he performed after his failed coup attempt, That seems like the culmination of this lifelong obsession with death and sacrifice.
Okay, so we've talked about his intense childhood, his obsession with the physical, his fervent nationalism, and his dramatic suicide. All pretty heavy stuff. But we haven't even touched on his sexuality yet,
Right.
which was another source of tension and creative exploration for Mishima.
That's right. Mishma struggled with his attraction to both men and women, and he explored these themes very openly in his writing, particularly in his novel Confessions of a Mask.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Published in 1949, this semi-autobiographical work delves into the protagonist's journey of self-discovery and the complexities of hiding his true identity behind a societal mask.
And this exploration of hidden identities, of inner turmoil, that seems to connect back to those early childhood experiences we talked about.
It's all interconnected. His personal struggles, his fascination with transgression, his search for meaning in a rapidly changing world, all of these elements, they found expression in his art.
So the question becomes, was his genius, his undeniable creative power, was it somehow linked to these struggles, to his potential psychological complexities?
That's the question we're trying to answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And while Mishima's life provides a compelling case study, we need to be careful about drawing sweeping conclusions from any one individual.
Of course.
Huh.
But I think exploring his life and work can give us some valuable insights into the creative process, the potential link between genius and mental illness, and just the human capacity for both great beauty and great darkness.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that these aren't just abstract concepts. They're deeply personal experiences that shaped Mishima's life and continue to resonate with readers and scholars today.
So what's next? How do we move beyond the biographical details and really start to unpack the relationship between creativity and mental illness in a broader sense?
Well, one way is to look at the broader context, the context in which Mishima lived and worked. Post-war Japan was a time of immense social and political upheaval.
Yeah, for sure.
The country was grappling with the loss of its empire, the influx of Western culture, and this redefinition of its national identity.
It's like the very foundation of his world was shifting beneath his feet. That sense of dislocation, of loss and uncertainty, it must have been profound.
Exactly. And for Mishima, who was so deeply invested in those traditional Japanese values, this cultural shift, it felt like a personal assault.
Wow.
Like a betrayal of everything he held dear.
And we see this reflected in his writing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
His characters, they often grapple with these same feelings of displacement, this longing for a lost world.
Absolutely. Take his novel Runaway Horses, for example.
Okay.
It's part of his epic tetralogy, The Sea of Fertility, and it focuses on Izao, a young, fiercely nationalistic student who is obsessed with the purity and sacrifice of the samurai.
Interesting.
He even romanticizes the failed 1936 coup attempt, the one known as the February 26th incident.
So he's drawn to these acts of rebellion, these attempts to reclaim a lost past, even if they're ultimately doomed to fail.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this fascination with rebellion and violent resistance, it's something we see in Mishima's own life as well. Remember, he formed his own militia, the Shield Society, just like Izao does in the novel.
It's almost eerie how closely his life mirrored his art. It's like he was using his writing to work through these obsessions, these anxieties about Japan's future.
And this blurring of the lines between fiction and reality, it's something that we see with many artists who struggle with mental health challenges. Their art becomes a way of processing their inner turmoil, of externalizing their fears and desires.
It can be a powerful form of catharsis, but it can also be dangerous, right? It's like they're creating these worlds where their darkest impulses can play out. And sometimes that can spill over into their real lives.
That's a real risk. And in Mishima's case, it seems like that's exactly what happened. His suicide, his carefully choreographed act of seppuku, it was almost like the ultimate performance, the final act of a play he had been writing his entire life.
He even left behind a detailed manifesto outlining his beliefs and motivations. Almost like he was trying to control the narrative, to shape how he would be remembered.
It's as if he wanted to make sure his death had meaning.
Yeah.
That it would serve as a wake-up call to the Japanese people. And in a way, he succeeded. His death, it became a global sensation, cementing his status as a literary icon, but also raising these profound questions about the nature of genius, the cost of creativity, and this complex relationship between art and life.
So where does all of this leave us? We've explored Mishima's troubled childhood, his obsession with the physical and spiritual, his fascination with death and rebellion, and his struggles with his sexuality. We've seen how all of these elements intertwine with his artistic vision, shaping his writing, and ultimately leading him down this path of self-destruction.
But it's important to remember that Mishima's story is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Right.
The question of whether creativity and mental illness are inherently linked is a complex one,
For sure.
and one that has fascinated thinkers for centuries.
I mean, we've got Van Gogh, Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf. The list of brilliant creative individuals who've struggled with mental health challenges, it's long.
Exactly. And there are countless others whose struggles may not have been as public or as dramatic, but they were no less real. So we can't really draw any definitive conclusions based on individual cases, however compelling they may be.
But we can learn from them, right?
Yeah, I think so.
By examining the lives and works of artists like Mishima, I think we can gain a deeper understanding of the creative process, the power of art to both heal and destroy, and just this complex relationship between genius and madness.
Absolutely. And perhaps, most importantly, we can learn to appreciate the humanity of the artist.
Yeah.
You know, the human being behind the work with all their flaws and struggles and triumphs.
It seems like this tortured artist trope, it's a dangerous oversimplification. It romanticizes suffering, and it ignores the resilience and courage that many artists show in the face of adversity.
I agree. It's a reductionist and potentially harmful stereotype. It's important to remember that the creative process itself can be a source of meaning and joy, even amidst pain and struggle.
It's about finding a way to channel those difficult emotions into something productive, something beautiful, something that connects with others.
Exactly. And Mishima, despite his tragic end, he ultimately achieved that. His work continues to resonate with readers around the world. It offers this glimpse into the depths of the human experience, both the light and the darkness.
So as we move into the final part of our discussion, I'm curious to explore how Mishima's legacy fits into this broader conversation about creativity and mental illness. We've looked at his personal story. What about the bigger picture? Are there any patterns, any insights that we can glean from looking at a wider range of artists and their experiences?
Yeah, as we've been discussing Mishima's life, it's easy to get caught up in the darkness, the drama,
Yeah,
the self-destructive tendencies.
right.
But what about the beauty, the moments of transcendence that his art achieved? We can't overlook that. You're absolutely right. I mean, for all his darkness, Mishima was a master of language, a weaver of worlds.
Yeah.
I mean, his prose, it was often described as shimmering, poetic, even hypnotic. He had this incredible ability to evoke sensory detail, to transport the reader to another time and place.
And his impact on Japanese culture, I mean, it was undeniable. He challenged conventions, pushed boundaries, sparked important conversations about national identity, sexuality, the role of art in society.
He was a controversial figure, no doubt about it. But his work continues to be studied, debated, and reinterpreted by scholars and artists around the world. He left a real mark.
And he was incredibly prolific, too. I mean, novels, short stories, essays, plays. He even wrote kabuki and no dramas, drawing on these traditional Japanese theatrical forms. It's an impressive body of work.
And that brings us to an important question. Could Mishima have achieved the same artistic heights without his inner demons? Without his obsession with death, his yearning for a lost world? It's a question that comes up again and again when we talk about the link between creativity and mental illness.
It's the age-old question, isn't it?
It is.
The tortured artist idea. Some people might argue that his art was fueled by his darkness, that his struggles gave him a unique perspective, a depth of feeling that wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
And others might say that his talent was innate, that his creativity would have found an outlet regardless of his personal circumstances. It's the classic nature versus nurture debate.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not an either-or situation.
Maybe not.
Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe his innate talent was shaped and honed by his experiences, by the challenges he faced, the demons he wrestled with.
It's like that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Of course, in Mishima's case, it literally did kill him.
Right.
But metaphorically speaking, his art, his creative output, it might be seen as a testament to his ability to transform his pain into something meaningful, something lasting.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, if we could somehow strip away the darkness, the drama, the self-destructive tendencies, would Mishima's art still resonate with us as powerfully as it does? Or is it the combination of brilliance and torment that makes his work so unforgettable?
That's
It's a difficult question to answer.
And there's no easy answer. But I think that's what makes exploring this topic so fascinating. There's no simple formula, no one-size-fits-all explanation for the creative process. Each artist's journey is unique. It's shaped by their own personal experiences, their own struggles, and their own triumphs.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Mishima's life and work, I think it's important to remember that he was more than just a mad genius. He was a complex, multifaceted individual who grappled with these profound questions about identity, meaning the human condition. And while his story is certainly a cautionary tale, it's also a reminder of the power of art to move us, to challenge us, and to connect us to something larger than ourselves.
Well said. And I think it's a reminder that we need to approach this topic with nuance, with compassion. The link between creativity and mental illness, it's complex, it's multifaceted. It's not about romanticizing suffering or pathologizing creativity. It's about understanding the human experience in all its messy, complicated glory.
Exactly, and recognizing that the creative process itself can be a source of both joy and pain, a journey of discovery, a struggle for meaning, a testament to the human spirit's resilience and capacity for transformation. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Mishima's life and this complex relationship between creativity and mental illness. We hope it sparked some thought-provoking questions for you to ponder on your own. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating.